And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. And there he builded an altar unto the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. You see, the mountain is a place apart. There's a reason that Lot didn't want to go to the mountain. The reason is because it's a struggle to get up the mountain.
To live in the mountain.
It's a fight to get up to the mountain. See, in the well-watered plains of Jordan, Lot had everything that he needed to sustain natural life. But when you get up to the mountain, vegetation doesn't come as easy as it does in the plain.
Right.
You see, you have to work for things in the mountain. You have to exert a certain energy to be able to even get up to the mountain in the first place. You have to push yourself. You have to walk. We gave the example of hiking before. When you're hiking in a mountain, you can't just carry everything that you want with you. Because if you're going to be up in the mountain, if you're going to walk in the mountain, you're going to need some energy. And so you have to lay aside some things. You have to put aside those things that aren't necessary, that don't profit you. When we're walking in this walk, God is calling us to come up to the mountain, to come away from the noise of the city, to come away from the distractions of people. This is not a natural mountain, but in the spirit, he's calling us to separate ourselves from the world, not to look towards Sodom, but to separate ourselves. He's calling us to exert some spiritual energy, to get to a higher place, to a place of elevation when we are separated from the base things of the world. God is calling us to separate ourselves this morning, to exert some energy to get up into the mountain. Because you see, not everyone can live up in the mountain. The population is sparse. There's not much noise in the mountain. Why? Because many people aren't there. You're apart. You know, when you look at even when you look at West Mountain, you look at the mountains, and only so many people can live up there because it takes some work to build a house on the side of the mountain. See, you can't just have a shallow house on the side of the mountain, because any wind can knock it down. If you don't have a deep foundation, if you haven't dug deep into the side of the mountain, you can't be established in the mountain. If we don't dig ourselves deep in God and dig our heels in and to grow and to exert some work, we can't establish ourselves in this mountain. We can't grow in the mountain, for you have to work. You have to expend energy to be able to come up to the mountain.
That's right.
And if you're going to expend some energy, you can't be holding on to all the things of the world. You have to lay aside those weights that so easily beset you. Because if you're carrying all the weight of the world and all these situations, you can't climb. You don't have the energy to go forward. You don't have the energy to move higher where God is calling you to go. When you're hiking up in the mountains, you can't carry your bed with you and all sorts of things with you and your big old suitcase with you. But when you travel up in the mountain, you can only carry what you need. God is calling us to get deeper and to get higher up into the mountain, to leave some things beside so that we can get to higher heights in Him. Do you ever wonder why so many of the visions that we see in the Old Testament, and so many visions that we see is spoken about, the Lord takes a person up into the mountains? Why do you think it is that God removes people when they're in the vision, removes them from the place where they are and takes them into the mountain? The reason is you have a better vantage point from the mountain. You see, when you're separated, when you're above everything else, you can have a better picture of what is actually happening. You have a better view of what is happening around you. You know, if you really want to see the city, you know, whenever we have tourists and we bring them to Montreal, we take them to the top of the mountain because they can see, they have an uninterrupted view. Well, God is calling us to come up to the mountain so we can have an uninterrupted view of what He desires. Not to be distracted by the sights at the base of the mountain, not to be distracted by the things that are surrounding us, but He's calling us to get up higher so that we can see things the way He sees them from His vantage point, so that we can look through the eyes of Christ. We heard a message a couple Wednesdays ago called Seeing Salvation Through the Eyes of Christ. God is calling us up into the mountain so that we can see salvation through His eyes, so we can see this life, this way that we're walking, we can see it through his eyes and that we could walk accordingly. You see, when God was giving Moses the commandments, he didn't come down to where the children of Israel were. He didn't come down the camp, but he called Moses up into the mountain.
Yes,
up into the mountain where only he and God were, where the presence, he was surrounded by the presence of God, where God could speak to him clearly, where God could articulate some things that Moses couldn't hear when he was amongst the complaining and the bickering of the people. Moses had to be drawn away up into the mountain where he and the Lord could commune together, away from the trouble of the camp, away from the rebellion of the camp, away from the arguing and the complaining and all the other things that the people in the camp were so concerned about. He had to be called up into the mountain, into the place where he met God.
Yes.
Church, God is calling us to get up to the mountain.
Get up higher.
To get up higher in him, to experience a different elevation. But you see, when we're here, it's so easy for us to depend on ourselves, to come up with our own ways, to lean on our own understanding. But when you're up high in the mountain, you can't lean on your own understanding. For if you were to go hike up Mount Everest, you can't just go hiking on your own, but you need a guide to lead you, and you are dependent on that guide to show you the way. Because as you get up in the mountain, there are some turns, there are some crevices, there are some sharp turns where you can't see what's coming around the bend, and so you need a guide who knows the way. God is our guide. He knows the way, and he's calling us to come up higher in him. He's calling us to come away from the things of the world, to lay aside the weight that do so easily beset us. He's calling us to leave away the things that we've been consumed with for so long, to leave them so that we can get up higher in him and see things the way he sees them.
That's right.
But there is a choice. You see, Lot was dragged out of the city, and you can stand with me this morning. I'm closing. You see, Lot was dragged out of the city by the angel, but he was given a command to get into the mountain.
That's right.
See, the Lord will not drag us. He will not take us to the mountain unless we're willing to go. The Lord he'll lead and he'll send a word, and as he sent this morning, he'll send the word for us, but he's looking for us to obey. He's looking for us to follow him up the side of the mountain. But the choice is ours this morning. The choice is laid before us. We can be like Lot and be lazy in the spirit and only desire to go so far. And don't get me wrong, we're blessed in that. But the blessing is limited because we can't get to know God when we're surrounded by the city, surrounded by the noise of the city and the distractions that are therewith.
Right.
True blessing is to know God. True blessing is to be in a relationship with God, and not just an amicable relationship, not just an acquaintance relationship, but an intimate relationship. But as long as we're distracted by the place where we are, as long as we're spiritually lazy and we desire to go no further than where we are, we can't be blessed as the Lord desires us to bless us. As long as we're comfortable staying where we are and staying with this little blessing that we have, then we will not see the great things that God desires to do for us. For Christ said, greater things than these shall ye do. But you see, there's a time that's coming for the Lord said that there will be many who said, Lord, we did great works in your name. We cast out demons and we did all manner of good things in your name. But he'll say, depart from me, for I knew you not. Why? Because they were so content to dwell in the plains instead of getting up into the mountain where God was calling them to go to have a deeper relationship with him. Why? Because they were so content just to stay where they are and not to push, not to exert any extra effort to get further, not to willing to exert any extra effort to get up early to seek God's face, and not just to bring our needs and petitions before him, but to seek him, to know what he desires and what he wants for us. Now here, depart from me, I knew you not, for they were too comfortable and being caught up in the things of this world, and were too comfortable just to come to church and think that that was the end of their duties and not take the time to get up the mountain.